Okay, so today we're going to be doing an experiment with sodium polyacrylate. And sodium polyacrylate is a white powder. So I have a little bit of sodium polyacrylate in this styrofoam cup right here. You can see it's at the bottom there. And then in the other cup, I have just a little bit of water. Okay, and usually we do this as a magic trick. So when I'm doing a chemistry demonstration, I'll call up a couple of people from the audience and tell the one that's holding the cup with the sodium polyacrylate that it's an empty cup, even though it's not. And I will ask a different person to pour the water from this cup into the sodium polyacrylate cup. And they'll do that, so I'm going to do that. And then I will usually ask the person who's holding the sodium polyacrylate cup to pour the water back. And when they try to do that, we find that, oh, the water has disappeared. But what has really happened is that the sodium polyacrylate has absorbed all of the water. It's a very absorbent material, and in fact, it's used in diapers for obvious reasons. Okay, of course, if you were in class, I would have you come up with your own question about sodium polyacrylate that you could test. But since you're not in class, I came up with a question. And my question is about distilled water versus tap water. So distilled water is pure water. It doesn't have any minerals in it. Tap water obviously has minerals and other things dissolved in it. So I've heard that sodium polyacrylate absorbs tap water differently than distilled water. So our question is going to be, how does the type of water affect the absorbency of sodium polyacrylate? So you can write that down for your question. And then obviously you can figure out the variables. The independent variable would be the type of water. We're not going to have a very quantitative way of measuring absorbency, but we can kind of just look and see which one is more absorbent. And then make a hypothesis. Do you think the sodium polyacrylate will absorb the distilled water more or the tap water? And then what I've done is I've put 1 gram of sodium polyacrylate in these cups. And then right here I have 40 milliliters of distilled water. Over here I have 1 gram of sodium polyacrylate again and 40 milliliters of tap water. So go ahead and pour the distilled water in here. And looks like I'll grab a spoon to test it. So it's pretty hard. Looks like it's absorbed quite a bit. Let's try the tap water. Okay, and I would say it is hardened about the same amount. So to me, right now, my conclusion is that the type of water doesn't seem to really affect how well the sodium polyacrylate absorbs. It seems to absorb distilled water and tap water equally well. Okay, so I was curious to see if the amount of water I added would affect how the sodium polyacrylate responded to the type of liquid. I was wondering if I maybe didn't add enough water to see a difference between distilled water and tap water. So I went ahead and added a bunch more water. So now this one has 120 milliliters of distilled water, and this one has 120 milliliters of tap water. And there is a difference, and I can tell there's a difference because when I put the spoon in the distilled water, like it starts to sink in a little bit, but not very much. It just kind of like stays there. But if I put the spoon on the tap water, it sinks in a lot more, like a lot more than it does in the distilled water, which to me is making me conclude that the tap water, that sodium polyacrylate doesn't absorb tap water nearly as well as it absorbs distilled water. This one's just a lot more gel-like, and this one's a little bit harder still. Like it's also somewhat gel-like, and I don't know if you can see it on here, but it's harder to stir than the tap water. So I think there's a pretty obvious conclusion there. You can write about this experiment in your conclusion, and maybe talk about why you think it wouldn't absorb tap water as well as distilled water.